Right. Hello, everyone. We're doing this extra special meeting today that I'm chairing. Rachel, myself, Lynn, and Roger attended a meeting last Friday, and we're going to tell you more about the next steps as we see it from that meeting. As I'm chairing it, I'm going to go to Rachel to start with, and then we'll just see where we go with the flow of it all. Okay, thank you.
Hey Julie, thank you. So yes, last Friday we all gathered in a hall not far from where Roger lives, and we sat through a sort of hour-long presentation which was given by the Irish Republic Brotherhood, IRB, and then we moved across to a sort of side room over the road where essentially a new England Co-Op was created, and it felt very, very historic. And in that meeting, a board, and don't get hung up on the word board, this is not a corporation or a board of directors, it was simply a kind of committee, shall we say, of 10 people were elected, nominated and seconded.
12 people.
Was there 12? I thought
Yes,
it was
it's
10.
12.
Okay, so there were 12. And then everyone basically signed up as members. So I think pretty much there were 60 people in that room. There were I'd say about 100, 120 in the main meeting. And then by the time we actually got to the signing, about 60 people actually signed as members. Now, as I understand it, one needs 300 people to create a movement, essentially, and 600 to create a nation. Now, since that meeting, there has been another meeting in Wales, which was on Saturday. I understand about 200 people attended that. And also, I have since spoken to John Gilbert, who was at the Wales meeting and is also very heavily involved in the community assemblies of the British Isles, Cabby, and the Cerno Assembly, which is Cornwall. And they are essentially declaring themselves, well, they already are their own sovereign nation. So they have affiliated, and they've got a mutual agreement with the Irish to recognise one another as sovereign states. So there's a lot happening at the moment. It feels very exciting, and I could go into more detail, but I'll just leave it there as a sort of overview summary, and maybe I can go into more detail because I had a very fascinating conversation with John Gilbert about what this all means. I always look to, like, what does it mean on a day-to-day level for us, So I can perhaps go into that in more detail later on in the call.
Lovely, thank you, Rachel. So my understanding is that we're a council, aren't we? That we've got together as a group of people, and the board that are the people that we've elected, the 12 people, are what we are calling a board, but we need to just sort of think about even both of those terms, because I know with how I feel about my local council not being there for people, we are in the light side of the council with this new cooperative council, and that's where we need to be. So Roger, would you like to say anything now? You'll need to unmute. You're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing really that I can add to what Rachel has said. So, no, there's nothing I can say which is of any benefit, really. Rachel's basically summed it all up.
Right, thank you. So basically, it's the Engleland Co-Operative, Engleland, and we could call it a micronation for England. And I know they're forming a micronation for Wales, a micronation for Scotland, and Ireland has already got its Irish Republic Brotherhood. That was established in 1858. from the notes that I've made here. And he gave us a really good background to what had happened in Ireland and some of the knock-on effects in other places as well. Quite a lot of different aspects he sort of introduced us to do with different people's courts and things like that. But I'm going to go back to Rachel for her to be able to tell us a little bit more, because I think she understands it better than I do.
Yeah, so what we will do, what I will do when I put this video up, I will put a link to the full presentation of that sets the whole scene and the history, because that really is going to explain it in much more detail, all of the background and the history which led up to this. The key thing that I got from speaking to John Gilbert this morning, because we had a very long discussion, and Conrad, I'm conscious we haven't come to you, but let me just share this, that John Gilbert was kind of explaining it in much more detail, that it's 300 is a very symbolic number. It's ancient. It's got an ancient sort of power to it. That if you can get 300 people who all agree to something, then you can create, essentially, it's not even a micronation, it's a parallel nation. And that parallel nation can have its own way of working. It can have its own police. And they have what they call a peace service that they have created in their areas, where they have pulled together. So this doesn't just have to be Engleland. So what they have done with the community assemblies is they've taken a small area and they've found 300 people, so that they've actually created a parallel sovereign nation. And then they've gone on to create their own healing and health and their own peace service. And they've also done a cooperative with the local farmers, so that they're able to source food locally from independent people outside of the system. Now, it doesn't mean, just to clarify, because this was a big question of mine, it doesn't mean that we can't still phone 999 if we have a problem. It doesn't mean that we can't get an ambulance or go to the NHS if we feel we choose to. But it's like you can have dual citizenship, shall we say, and even citizen is a loaded word. We have to be careful with our spellings here. So we are now members of Engleland Co-Operative, which will then, once all of the Welsh, Ireland and England needs 300 members to create the co-op, and then 600 to create the nation. Once all of those four are in place, they then become the Albion Co-op, which is all four of those countries. Wales, they called it WISE, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, England. So this is very much early stages, but you can see the potential of the people. Basically, now we've all gone into politics, and this was the interesting thing with the discussion with John Gilbert, because the last time I spoke to him was about 2 years ago, when I was first standing for local council, and he said, don't bother. And I'm like, no, I have to do it. But having been through the political system, and all of us, Roger, Julie, myself and Lynn, have all we've gone into the system, into politics, and we have witnessed for ourselves how corrupt it is. And we know, without any shadow of a doubt, well, certainly I know in my heart of hearts, there is no way that we are going to overturn that system. It's completely corrupt. It's completely taken over by external corporate forces and media forces. And when you have a landslide government which is elected by less than 20% of the people, so over 80% of the people did not vote for Starmer and Labour. And even it's only been weeks since that government has been in place, they have done things which have violated the manifesto they presented to the people. And they even have their own party voting against themselves. The trade unions, people like Rosie Duffield leaving and speaking out. So it's actually very shocking that when power is given how it can be abused and run away with so quickly, to the extent that even the Labour Party is divided now. So this is the truth of Westminster, and that system is no longer fit for purpose, and we know it. So rather than waste our time and energy trying to go into that system and try and change it, it's not going to happen. I know in my heart of hearts that that's not going to happen. We have to co-create a parallel possibility, an alternative future reality, where we focus our energy on protecting the people and the rights of the people. We are the people of this land, and we have fundamental rights to our sovereignty, and this is what this movement is all about. So it may only be small at the current time, but what it does do is it gives the people, we the people, an alternative to the shit show which is being forced upon us. So shall we go to Conrad now, because I can sense you're aching to contribute.
Yes, Conrad, and it's lovely to see that you're out of hospital, and yeah, welcome to the meeting. Would you like to say anything now?
I don't have, thank you, and good day to everyone here. I don't have a great deal to say, other than I am incredibly curious about this. I have heard about it, of course. I'm also familiar with John Gilbert. I've met him a few times. He's a lovely man. He actually, I think it was even before the whole shit show, I saw him together with a lady called Sue, I can't remember her name, down here in Devon, giving a very good talk about the, I always forget the name of the British system. Anyway, name's gone. What I'm curious is, though, do the 300 or the 600 members need to be in a certain area or town, or can they be spread about? That's one question. And the other question is, to what extent do you feel or sense that we're going to be accepted if we are part of this movement? And will the government basically just ride roughshod over us? Those are my two main questions.
Oh, Julie, are you muted now?
I think you're muted.
Did I mute you? Sorry. You did.
Right, I don't know if I muted myself, but yeah, so my understanding is the 300 to 600, it can be throughout the whole of England, and as Rachel said, that each England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland are having their own sort of nations, but we're all coming together as the Albion overall. And ultimately what we'll be looking at doing is having councils within that Albion, which will be more specific locations. But at the moment it's just going to be the whole of England that is our focus, because we're all based in England at the moment. And I didn't write your second question down, so I'm going to let Rachel answer that.
You're going to have to remind me of your second question, Conrad.
Yes, sure. I just wondered how you feel, especially you, dear Rachel, who's had the Gestapo at your door.
Oh, yes, of course.
You know, will the government just ride roughshod over us?
Okay, so this is one of the things that I actually discussed with John. How does it work on a practical level? Now, what he has been doing, and his thing is called Community Assemblies of the British Isles, CABI, yeah. So they have got they've got 30 of those in different areas, and they're very strong, particularly down south. I know there's a strong one in Brighton. And what they have done, because they have got their own peace service and they've got their own community court, and it's all based on natural law as opposed to common law, which essentially is God's law, which to me is, they're very aligned, common law and God's law. They basically fundamentally do no harm. And so the people have created a people's, like a court, I would call it a common law court, that's what they're calling them in Australia. And they have got a peace service, so they have got peace service, a police service in uniform. They have their own uniform that are recognised by the main police. And so if they do a meeting or a demonstration, they advise the mainstream police that they are policing their own demonstration. So they have essentially created a parallel police service. And they have also, one of their members was arrested for whatever reason. And so some of their police service went to the police station and asserted their authority to have him released. John was telling me. So, so the people do have power, and this is the interesting thing to me of how do we create something, a people's. I don't even like to use the word force. A people's movement, which can truly assert itself and say no. You know, we are taking control. We're taking control back, and we're opting. You know, opting out is you know, it's a parallel. It's a parallel thing. So it's not about. And actually, I want to correct myself there, because we have to be very careful of this spelling, because John Gilbert did correct me on this. In truth, there is nothing to opt out of. In truth, there is nothing to opt out of, because we as the people, the only thing we can do is opt in. Essentially, we can establish a contract with someone. So, for example, when the police came to my door and I said, yes, come in, officer, I've then contracted and invited them into my space. Now, I didn't consent to that, and therefore my rights have been violated, because everything has to be by consent, by contract. So if you don't consent to something, it can't be forced upon you. So that in truth, there's nothing to opt out of. There's only an opt-in. And every one of these community assemblies or groups can create their own rules. So the Engleland Co-Op could decide its own rules, which might be slightly different to the Welsh Co-op. They might decide that, you know, sheep rights are way up on the list, whereas we may think that cow rights are higher up on the list. You know, everyone can establish their own priorities. So it's not like there's an external force like the Irish, like the IRB, telling us what to do. They're not in control. They have just facilitated and inspired a group of us to come together and form our own cooperative. So it's not like we're under the rule of the Irish or anything like that. This is all done through mutual consent and creating a structure where we have allies, essentially, and we recognise one another's sovereignty. So
Ray,
I just wanted to complete, and what John has suggested is that he was suggesting to me that I join with some others who are interested in creating a community assembly specifically for Derbyshire. And we know from the meetings that we've had, and there's enough small groups around here, that there's easily 300 people who could create a community assembly in Derbyshire. So we could create our own, within the Engleland Co-op, we can have a Derbyshire, we could have one for every county, a bit like they've done down south. So we can have a Derbyshire Co-op, which is a community assembly where the people have basically said, we're going to create our own system. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't want to say, but I have been saying it for quite a while, that we need to do this thing completely separate from the present system that we have lived in. One more thought is the affidavit. Should we, or could we, or is it an idea that we all write out an affidavit? I'm looking at writing one which is more like a letter instead of the more form-like one that is suggested by the I think his name is Alex, the chap from Australia that Richard Vobes interviewed. He has a particular form. It's something like 15 pages long, which is fine. And I know that also Peter, I think, also has a system. and I'm looking at writing basically a letter, a very pleasant letter to dear old George up there and Mr. Starmer, that basically, thank you very much, but no thank you. What do you think? Do you think that's a possible thing that we should include in the 300 who sign up to the album?
So the way that I understand it, and sorry to talk all over this, Julie, but the way I understand it is that everyone who's done this previous has created their own different letters, affidavits, templates, and they are making them available for us to use if we wish or to adapt if we wish. So we have total free will. There's no rules and regulations. So we can basically it's a bit like a franchise where people have done it before. And this is happening already with so many of these things, like a lot of the stuff that Chris Coverdale is doing, where he's making his templates and letters available. I know allegedly Dave is doing the same thing for how to deal with the authorities. So they're available, and I've been helped by various people, and I quite often adjust the wording because I read through and I think, no, that bit doesn't rankle, that doesn't suit me. I'm going to change the wording of that or remove it. So you know, we have our free will to be able to take the best of what others have done and created, adjust it, because it has to sit right in our heart of this is my truth, you know, and this is my declaration. But
absolutely,
yeah, these are very interesting times, and that it's like no one knows. We're just helping one another. No one actually, there's no sort of one way. We're just helping one another to essentially assert our rights. Yeah, so it's very exciting times, and we've got a massive solar eclipse happening on Wednesday. Feels very symbolic that this is happening at the current time. And it's in Libra, which is all about peace and balance and restoring harmony. And I mean, I just waking up this morning to the news reports of what's going on in Lebanon with the whole Israel thing. I mean, this has to stop. And we know we cannot rely on, sorry, I'm going to go off on one, but we cannot rely on Starmer and Westminster and America. You know, they're controlled by forces which are essentially evil. We, the people, have got to take back the power and assert our right to live in a world of peace and love and harmony for all beings. We have to do this now. It's like
absolutely,
we can't just
Rachel.
stand by and let this shit show roll on unchecked.
I'm right with you. Totally agree. Lovely to know that you're in it too. Thank you.
And that's why it's been good having you on the meeting as well, Conrad, because you weren't at the meeting on Friday, you'll have different things that you can ask us because you didn't hear all of that presentation. So thank you very much for joining us. So really,
I look forward to the link. I really want to listen to the take on that meeting. So when you put it on, thank you.
Yeah, good, lovely, thank you. So basically, we're saying we don't need to each be remaking the wheel. So there are different wheels that are being made, and we are just adapting them to each person's own life path. And I love the fact of saying that we really need to be true to our heart, because that is definitely where we need to be. Now, there was mention on Friday about the electoral register. And when I'm sort of thinking of these parallels rather than a either or, and I know, I mean, when I was first a candidate, I was sort of against people spoiling the ballot paper, because that in effect stopped me getting my deposit back, which we shouldn't even need deposits, and it should not be down to money stuff that anyone is a candidate. And even if we had 1,000 people on the ballot paper, so what? People that are voting hopefully will know out of those 1,000 people who they want to vote for. But then I know in my last ballot paper, because I was still on the electoral register and I still am at the moment, I was very glad to be able to put my own wording on it and actually spoil that ballot paper and let them know what I thought of the whole system. So any thoughts from any of you? I will go just in the order that I can see people in, so I know that I've covered everyone. But any thoughts, Rachel, on what you feel about the ballot paper, electoral register?
Well, essentially what the guy who did the presentation last Friday said was, you can withdraw your consent anytime. You can go online and you can essentially remove yourself from the electoral register. And he recommended doing that. And I have to say, I did, having been into politics, and a lot of people when I was in politics and standing said exactly the same thing. Do not register, do not give your consent to the system. And I am at that stage now. I'm ready to withdraw from the electoral register, and I will be doing that later today. I've advised all my sons to withdraw. They only signed up because they wanted to vote for me. But I think it's time for us to mass withdraw. And this is the interesting thing. The turnouts we have been seeing, elections have been plummeting because, and we know this from being on the streets of doing campaigning, the level of distrust amongst the people towards politics and politicians is at an all-time rock bottom low. And we even have a situation now where Starmer is basically supposed to be Labour, supposed to be for the people, proving himself to be a Bollinger Bolshevik, taking all of these gifts from Lord Ali. And Lord Ali has been given the keys to number 10. So it's not as if he's not getting any favours out of it. It's absolutely corrupt to the core. This is not the Labour Party that I knew when I was growing up. Certainly not the Labour Party of Jeremy Corbyn and co. And I know from, sorry, I'm off on one again, but I know from interviewing Piers Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn's brother, he said they won't get away with it with Labour because there's too many wild cards within the Labour Party. And that's what we're seeing now. So I think it's actually the Labour Party that is going to put paid to Starmer. We won't need to do that. But I personally am going to deregister and I'm not going to participate. I did spoil my ballot for the Police Crime Commissioner and the East Midlands Mayor. I mean, can you imagine a situation where in a People's Assembly, like the one on Friday, where they said, oh, if you want to stand, you're each going to have to put up £1,000 before you will allow people to vote for you. I mean, you just say, what? Are you crazy? What do you mean? That's not democracy. But how have we allowed a system? I mean, London Mayor was £10,000 just to get on the ballot paper. It's absolutely outrageous, and it's being done to exclude people who don't have financial resources. And that's before you even get to the cost of marketing and election campaigning. And we know that all of the main parties are funded to the tune of millions by big corporate donors. The system is utterly corrupt. Sorry, I'm repeating myself, but these points are very important. And I think when you get to that point of such exasperation with a corrupt system, you have no choice but to create something which is a viable alternative, which makes sense, and it acts to protect the interests of the people of this country and not the big corporations and their World Economic Forum overlords and whoever the dark shadowy forces. I think we all know who they are, but we can't say it because we have our front door beaten down by the police and arrested and put in prison for putting things on social media which are anti a certain I won't go on, but this is where we're at now, folks. We have to assert our rights as the people of this country.
Thank you, Rachel. And I'm glad I've been through the process that I went through as a candidate in different times. And even I was Newark and Sherwood Council on one, Mansfield on the other one, and just seeing the difference between those two. And I was more supported with Newark and Sherwood, but the Mansfield definitely not a supportive process. And also, I mean, I even asked about, was there some free delivery of leaflets, and I was told that there wasn't. And then once I'd ordered my next lot of leaflets, oh, you've got to pay nearly £730 to be able to be included in the leaflet that everybody else would be included in. Otherwise, instead of 2 pages, I would have just have had 2 lines. And they think that's right, and it is so wrong. and there's lots of people that cannot afford to even pay the deposit, let alone all the campaigning. And the number of leaflets I had through and the adverts that I've seen on the social media and things from the other candidates is ridiculous. Right, I'll come to Roger now. So thank you very much, Rachel, on that one. You'll unmute again. So your feelings on the electoral register or anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I certainly am going to do what Rachel's doing, and that's to eliminate myself from the electoral register. I don't want to be part of this system in any way whatsoever. I'm really just kind of absorbed at the moment with trying to get this trial by jury. And I had an appointment this morning to speak to somebody at His Majesty's Tribunal and Court Service. And I'm not really sure how this system is working, because now it seems like I've got to go through a kind of a two-stage thing where I have this meeting by telephone, and I've got to, jump through that hoop. And if I'm accepted, then I've got to go, as Rachel and I did, to a magistrate's court. This time, I think it's in Harrogate, which was the court which convicted me, and imposed a fine of about £1,000. So, so that's the process that I'm going through now, and which is absorbing, my thoughts.
And they do. It takes your energy and time, doesn't it? All this that they're putting people like you through, and it's really what benefits and what harm would it be if you weren't having to go through that? But thank you for that, and thanks for your comment about the electoral register. So, Conrad, anything that? Oh, sorry, Roger. Anything else you wanted to say?
Well, I just wanted to say that, as far as I'm concerned, it's part of the Constitution. Why should I have to be going through all this this bureaucracy? I mean, why the hell? I mean, the Magna Carta, the 1297, King Edward I, what's the word they use? Signed off on it anyway. Because what people have got to realise is there are two Magna Cartas which are relevant in our lives. So the original Magna Carta, which is 1215, and that was a contract, pure and simply a business contract between the barons and King John. But in 1297, that Magna Carta was taken up by Edward I, and it was put into it was made into an Act of Parliament, and most of the clauses have been retracted, if that's the word. Probably isn't the right word, but anyway. But the one which is still there is the one which gives us the right to trial by jury, and that's clause 39. So why they're putting me through this when really it's on the statute books that I'm entitled to a trial by jury? I just don't know.
But I would say on a higher level of things, Roger, you're doing this for all of us to actually be able to support us, to know how ridiculous the system is, and that we need to replace it with a different one. Well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Conrad. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Conrad, any thoughts on electoral register?
Well, first of all, thank you, Roger. Thoughts on electoral register? Well, this is probably a little bit strange, but I am not on the electoral register. I never have been. I never signed up for it, and I have never voted once at all. That has been my way since whenever, 18, and I'm now 77. So take it for what it's worth.
Yeah. So that speaks volumes as well, doesn't it? That you didn't feel like we need to
I
go
think
in
so.
that system. Yeah. So another thing that's has come to my awareness is the Labour Party have got this other party that's affiliated to them called the Co-Operatives UK. Now, I only learnt about this on the run up to the general election, and okay, that will be Labour Party people that were perhaps fed up with the main Labour Party and they've branched off. But even using that terminology, Cooperatives UK, because I had someone that was trying to say, oh, you know, they're the right people to go with, but it doesn't see, it just seems part of the usual political system and not as parallel as we need to be. Yeah.
Anyone can create a cooperative. It's like a private members association. Anyone can create a cooperative around anything. It's like the cooperative supermarket in Bakewell technically is owned by the people, but is owned by its members. So I don't think we should get fazed by the terminology. I just wanted to say a couple of things. Firstly, about the legal system. My observation, and I'm in a similar position to you, Roger, where I am questioning everything now, and I am requiring a trial by jury, and I am testing the system, and I have gone to various hearings, and I have experienced for myself the absolute and utter resistance by the system to allow we the people to assert our right to a trial by jury. And the reason for that is they know that the system, the justice system, would collapse if everyone was granted their right to a trial by jury. The way that all of this works, it depends on fast track court processes like the single justice system, where they can just rubber stamp people through a court en masse, especially now that they are spitting out these speeding fines and parking fines and all the rest of it. But computers are spitting out millions of them. Speeding fines, we worked out 5 million a year are being issued. 5 million. That's basically 500 million pounds worth of fines, £500 million worth of fines to the people for using the public highways which we own. The system is out of control, and when we wake up to that, when the people wake up to that and say no, we do not consent to the magistrates process, we do not consent to a single justice system, do not consent to these short track, we do not consent to small claims court. You don't have to consent to any of these lower courts, which have all been manufactured. They are not, they're just simply fast track administrative processes. If we en masse refuse to consent to their authority and asserted our rights to a trial by jury, the entire justice system would absolutely grind to a halt. And I would say it's already creaking at the seams from my experience of it, trying to deal with these courts and trying to get responses. The other thing I wanted to sort of big up with you, Conrad, that people may not be aware that you are, and you might want me to cut this out of the thing, which I'm happy to do after, if you're not comfortable to talk about this, but I think you have spoken about it on a previous call. But you are there living in woodland which you own. You're not causing any harm to anyone. You're not causing any harm to the environment. You've built your own cabin. You're living very happily. Thank you very much. You're essentially living off grid and extricated yourself to the system, and yet still your peace and your castle doctrine has been violated by the authorities attempting to assert their command control over you. So I don't know if you want to speak briefly to that, because to me this is a fascinating and fundamental, crucial crux. Do we, the people, have the right to be on land which we own? And that is a very ancient and fundamental right to me, as men and women of the land, that we have the right to be on land which we own. And this was actually quite a key thing that they talked about in the presentation on Friday, that because a lot of land is registered, essentially that registration, because you're within the system, you're deprived of some of your rights. And so part of this is how to reclaim those rights so that you can essentially reclaim full title. So I'm quite interested to hear from you, Conrad, about that, if you're happy to talk about it.
Yes, I'm perfectly happy to talk about it, because example, I believe, is one of the greatest ways we can help towards bringing about humanity into alignment to and what we really are. Yes, I am so happy to be here. I came back from the hospital 2 days ago, and I have been out and about singing and praying to my trees and plants. I'm in bliss at the moment. I have to admit, it is absolutely beautiful for me to be here. As for the authorities, it has been an inner journey which has been really quite amazing to me, in so much as the very first time my dear friend Trevor, now Trevor, bless his cotton socks, is my enforcement officer, and he's a lovely young man. He really is. I can feel that he actually has a good heart underneath his way of being. And so therefore I look on him as a friend and someone who's very decent. I've written 2 letters to him, and again, they are letters that are written with love in them. And basically, I haven't heard from him since, which is interesting. I suggested in one of the letters, the last letters, I said, why don't you just leave me alone? It would be really nice if you would. I can't remember the phrasing that I used, but I know that it was warm, loving, and caring. And so far, so good. I am certainly blessed with that particular sign of things, way of things. All my friends, all the prepping group that I'm part of, they're all aware of this, and there's quite a few of us that have land. 1 or 2 of us have actually got one person I know has now got full permission, but I don't believe that we should even be asking for permission. I don't believe that they have any authority. But the inner journey has been the one that's been the most important, because at the very beginning, I actually have a recording of when Trevor Deer came onto my land against the castle doctrine, saying he had the right to do so. And you can hear in my voice how it shook with the fear of what he could do to me. Over the 3 or 4 years that I have been doing this, I've worked on myself, and I feel now that should he arrive again, I can invite him in for a cup of tea if he'll come, and we can sit down and have a chat, and hopefully I can educate him a bit, but not from fear, not from a shaking within, but from a feeling of love, the love that I have for the very fact that I'm here, and the love that I have for everybody. It's something I think we old men get to come to eventually, and that's the best I can say on that. I don't know if that really answers your question, Rachel.
Oh, that's beautiful. I absolutely resonate with what you're saying. But when the fear of these thugs, I mean, Trevor sounds like and they are jobs worth, let's face it. They've got their procedures manuals and their kind of tick boxes, and they've got their protocols, you know. But when we lose our fear of them and their alleged authority, it is like a sort of emperor's new clothes, isn't it? Is they rely on that authority and that I'm in charge, and because I've got a uniform on and it says police, or I've got a clipboard, or I've got a lanyard, and here's my title. But this is the thing, when you refuse to deal with the title and you say, I'm dealing with you as a man or a woman, it's exactly what I'm doing with the police. I want to know the names and the addresses of these 4 people, these 4 men and women who broke into my home. I'm not dealing with constables or names or titles. When I deal with the Peak Park Authority, I'm dealing with the man called Phil Mulligan, who calls himself a chief executive, but he's a thug, he's a criminal, he's violated and destroyed and ecologically damaged land which I co-own. And the fact that these people think that they can get away with this just because they've got a title or they've got a uniform or a lanyard, no, it's not happening. So yeah, this is the thing. I think once we lose fear And having been arrested, for example, and been put in a police cell and having gone to court, I have no fear. I have no fear of it whatsoever anymore. You know, let them do their worst. We have to walk through the fire of that fear and as you say, operate from truth and love and freedom and the rights of the people. And not even to be frightened of death, to be quite honest, because we realise we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and this is the part of the sort of bodhisattva journey, is that we are being called to end all pain and suffering on this planet. It's not just about individually escaping. This is about, as you say, paving the way for the liberation of all of the people who are in an invisible prison, and many of them are not even aware that they're in an invisible prison built of fear and spelling and curses and trauma, which is all invisible, but it's what holds people, traps them. So, you know, we're doing this, as you said, Julie, for a much bigger purpose.
So this book I've just been lent, The Indoctrinated Brain. I haven't read it yet, but so could you explain to me, because someone was starting to try and advise me about the wording, I do not understand. Could you explain a little bit more about using that terminology so that you don't get suckered into what they're trying to impose on us?
So it's an interesting one, because I do not understand is essentially I do not stand under you, but if you say that to a police officer or in a court, and I've used that in response to courts, for example, what they will twist it round is, well, what don't you understand? What don't you understand about that? And I had actually a response from a court saying, if you don't understand, then you need to get a solicitor or a barrister to act for you. So they'll twist it round. And the danger is, of course, that one of the things in their back pocket, and I have been advised of this is one thing they do use, if you keep saying, I do not understand, they potentially can section you under the Mental Health Act. And we have a good friend who has been through that nightmare shit show. And in fact, Brian Smith, who passed, he was also sectioned under the Mental Health Act, and he actually did manage to extricate himself. But it's a very frightening thing when they start, you know, saying, oh, what don't you understand? Are you mentally ill? Sort of thing. So whilst we may not say, I do not understand, I think it's also important to say, I do not consent. I'm exercising my right to remain silent. I do not consent to the jurisdiction of this court. I do not consent to your power over me, or any phrases like that, which make it really clear that we are not consenting, we do not understand, we are not contracting, we're declining their offer to contract, and we're not consenting to their action. And that's why with the police, when they came to my door, they open it, otherwise we cause more damage. Now, if I had opened that door, that would have been me consenting. At no point did I consent to their trespass on my land, and they'd already broken my castle doctrine at the gate, because they'd taken the gate off the hinges, even though it was padlocked, with a sign saying visitors by appointment only. So, you know, it's important that I do not understand. Essentially, I do not consent. I do not contract with you. I do not recognise your authority over me. So yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, Julie, but that's my understanding anyway.
Thank you. And I think the Albion movement will help people to empower them to realise that. And as we keep saying, we have to be in that place of love, go from the heart. That doesn't mean we're going to be just trodden all over. We are positively assertive, and through standing our ground in the way that Rachel's just described it, that's what we need to do. And even if they do come and use such force, which was incredible what Rachel had to go through, and your family and friend, and when you think that was not because of anyone being hurt, it was just supposedly a car that had been damaged, and not necessarily even by the friend. But I know what I went through with the courts when I was going through divorce. It taught me a lot then, that I actually, from then on, have not trusted the system at all. And it just is such a ridiculous show. And I can't say I'm glad I went through that, but it gave me some more understanding of stuff that I would have thought I could have trusted before, and I know
Yeah.
now I can't. And when I experienced the police in the queue the other day, deliberately making more vehicles when there'd been an accident and not actually doing anything properly with marked police cars to ease that traffic. I mean, it's just, why are they doing that? And that is the sinister stuff that is behind all this. But we move forwards with love rather than fear, and we keep standing up to them. And that is what this movement is about. So I really do impress on people. Please watch the video that Rachel's going to link in, and then you'll gain more understanding. And I would say watch it more than once, because the first time of listening is try to be as blank slate as you can be, but keep listening to it and keep asking other people about it, so that we can discuss, so that we then understand better where we all stand and where we're uniting together to move forwards with this. So, right, anybody else want to say anything? I'm very aware that we're nearly on 1 o'clock. So, Roger, did you want to say a bit of anything else?
No, Julie, I've said as much as is useful or informative, and
Thank you.
I mean, I'm very impressed by the way Rachel can succinctly articulate everything together. So she's the one to listen to, not me.
I'm glad I'm chair, because then I can say, right, Rachel, can you talk to us, please?
Well, I have had a lot of experience in media and public speaking and training in it. So it's and I realised that I was gifted by the universe the many years speaking in business, so that now I'm speaking out about liberation and the people's rights, and I was gifted those skills so that I can cut through, because words are like a knife. Truth has a resonance, and it can cut through the illusion. So it is like a sword, and it is like Athena's sword, the sword of truth. Yes.
And I love the fact that we are in the heart of England, in the very middle of England. And Roger's sort of slightly expanding out more, but Rachel, myself and Lynn, the 3 co-founders of the Love Movement, Liberation, Opportunity, Vitality, Empowerment, we are at the core, the heart centre of England. And that is where we need to be emanating out from. And
Conrad, where are you, by the way? Conrad?
Where am I? I'm right down in the very south of Devon, with a 15-minute walk to 2 beaches.
Oh, sweet. That's lovely.
Very nice indeed. Absolutely.
That's a very, very consciously aware community down in Devon.
Yeah.
We've got quite a good lot happening down here. Absolutely. I just want to say, in fact, as Julie just mentioned, the 3 of you ladies, I really do appreciate the movement that you have started, and I'm glad to be able to come in and speak with you all.
And of course, all parts of England are equally important. Yes, we're working from the heart, but without the limbs and things, we don't get anywhere, do we? And so we are all working together. And hopefully, well, no, my vision is, not hopefully, we will be having our own more local councils within that whole of that cooperative. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely, that's one thing that I am going to be putting some focus of energy into, the Derbyshire Co-Operative or Assembly or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But so that,
and it's lovely that you're going to make that wheel for us to then be able to perhaps wheel it out to Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire, Lincolnshire, and keep spreading out, and Yorkshire.
Yeah, well, a lot of the groundwork's already been done, because we've for 4 years people have been doing local pockets, and it won't take much to pull all of that together into 300 people, 300 members, and then we have got that is the required number.
Yeah.
300 is key. So yes, I'll as soon as I know more about that, I'll let everyone know. But I think one of the really key things just to leave this with, and one of the things that the pennies that really dropped with us on Friday when we were discussing this with Lynn, and also discussing it with John, power of what happened on Friday and Saturday was that we met in person and it wasn't done online. And this is one of the things with the love movement. We've tried to do it online, but there's a tremendous power to meeting in person, even if it's only a handful of people that stand in the park, or 100 people in a hall somewhere. That was the key. And that was when we were instigating the whole love movement. I'm really getting so much that this online everything is a trap, and it is helpful sometimes, like we're here doing this on Zoom, but there is a tremendous power in people gathering together in a room, the energy of a group, to put its intention and visioning and energy into a movement and an alternative. It creates a torus field of energy, it's unstoppable, that momentum, and that momentum has been created now, and it's unstoppable.
And I know Derbyshire has some very strong people that are going and helping when bailiffs have been going and things like that.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can connect with all those, and we need these peace people in service to us all as well. We'll see where we go with all of that as well, but I'm sure that will be happening.
Yeah. Cool.
Right, lovely. So we will finish there. So shall we just finish the recording and then just stay on in case there's a bit of anything else anyone wants to say? So thank you very much, everybody, for listening and watching this. And hopefully you will listen to the link that Rachel will be sharing. And please, if I can encourage you to listen more than once, keep meeting up and talking to physical people as well. But keep reaching out. And we've got this wonderful technology as well. So we'll use technological intelligence. I don't like the term artificial intelligence. We're using technological intelligence to connect together. Thank you very much.
Thanks for hosting, Julie.
Thank you.